Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to another lecture on EE434. We shall now start the second module of this particular course. Previously, we have discussed some of the devices. In this particular module, we shall discuss the DC to DC converters. As you can see here, from DC to DC. So both the input is also DC and the output is also DC. There are various kind of converters that are found in literature that converts the DC from one form to another form, and they vary in different aspects. For instance, DC to DC converter might have a capability of either the stepping up the voltage or they are able to step down the voltage. So those which are able to step up the voltage are known as the boost converters. Those that step down the input voltage are known as the buck converters, and there are those that have a tendency to either step up the given voltage or step down the given voltage, and they are known as the buck boost converters. Other than that, DC to DC converters can also be classified in terms of the isolated topology or a non-isolated topology. DC to DC converters can also be attributed in terms of the gain that they provide. So some of the DC to DC converters available in the research material, they provide excellent gaining capabilities from the input to the output. So there they have a high gain, and consequently some of them have a higher number of components in it. Some of them may have more than one switches, may having the coupled inductors and the capacitors. So DC to DC converters for this particular course shall deal with the very basic types of the converters that usually forms the bottom line for the future understanding and future research in the field of DC to DC converters. So let us start with the topic. But before we start with the topic, I want to have a quick recap of the behavior of the inductor with respect to the applied DC voltage. So let us first of all see how an inductor behaves when we connect it with a DC power supply and DC voltage, and then we shall move on to the DC to DC converters. Suppose that we have an inductor through which the current flow from this side to this side, and therefore we say that this is positive and this is negative, and this is the applied voltage VL. According to the current voltage characteristics of an inductor, the voltage across the inductor VL is equal to L di by dt, which means that if we apply a constant voltage to an inductor whose value is also constant, then the current shall rise in a linear way such that if the voltage persists, the current will soon reach the dangerous levels and eventually it will burn out. So using this particular equation, we shall develop our instincts of how the applied voltage forces the slope of the current to go in a positive direction or in a negative direction. So let us say that this particular inductor is connected through some switch. It is connected to a voltage source V1. In that particular case, the current IT across an inductor shall rise from the zero value till some final value at a slope. This slope is known as di over dt. This is the rate of change of the current, and that is equal to VL over L, and that is equal to V1 over L. So we have a slope V1 over L here. Now next, suppose that we connect this to another supply which is known as V2, and we connect this to this particular point V2. We also suppose that this V2 is less than this V1, which means that since this voltage is positive and we can see that the polarity of the voltage across the inductor is the same as that of V1, therefore what happened here is that it will continue to rise in the positive direction, but with a lesser slope, and this slope is equal to V2 over over L. Now let us assume that we have another voltage here, which is a negative voltage. This is V3, and we connect this inductor with this voltage V3. Now because this voltage is negative, therefore this di over dt shall become equal to minus V3 over L. With a negative slope means that the current shall now move in a negative slope, or it will decrease from this particular point till the point this inductor is connected with this voltage source V3. So it shall have a negative slope. The slope is minus V3 over L, and suppose that as a final step we connect this to ground. If I connect this with ground, then what happen, that the voltage across the inductor become equal to 0. With the voltage become equal to 0, this di over dt is equal to V over L, and this is equal to 0. And a 0 slope means that the current shall have a constant value thereafter, right? So this is the basis of the analysis of all the DC to DC converters, that we need to identify the slopes of the inductor, and that is why I have shortly discussed the behavior of the inductor when it is applied with some voltage V1, V2, V3 with different slopes and different values, with negative slope and with the positive slope. Also we have seen that when we have no voltage across the inductor, that is when the rate of change of the current through an inductor is equal to 0. At that particular point there is no voltage across the inductor, and this is what this VL is equal to L d over dt actually explains. Now let us move on with the concept of the DC to DC converters. Before we proceed further, let me outline the assumptions for the analysis of the DC to DC converter. The first assumption is that all the elements are lossless, which means that the converter shall be operating at 100% efficiency, such that we have the input volt power equals to the output power. The second assumption is that the capacitor or the output capacitor is large enough so that there is no ripple at the output. So we have a large enough capacitor such that all the ripples are neglected. Number 3, we assume that the circuit operates in a steady state condition. And number 4 is that our switching time instant or the switching period Ts is divided into two parts. The one is the DTS, and the other one is 1 minus d time Ts, which is also equal to d dash Ts. So if the converter is switching at this particular frequency, then this is the Ts, this region is DTS, and I will say that this is d prime Ts, and this d prime Ts can also be attributed as 1 minus d time Ts. With this, let us move on to the first and the most primitive type of the DC to DC converter. In the first lecture, we stated that we discussed a very basic type of a converter, where we said that if we have this one equal to Vs or V in, let us say this is V in and we want to convert this Vn to some voltage V naught across this resistance R, then we can accomplish this by using a switch here. And because the switch induces the ripples in the output voltage, therefore those zero periods can be compensated by using a low pass filter in the circuit. So let us say we have a low pass filter here, which consists of the inductance and the capacitance. And because we have this inductance here, so as a first rule we should know that inductor in a circuit is never to be open circuited, right? We cannot have an abrupt change in the inductor. Suppose that we have some voltage here that is applied to an inductor. At some instant we switch on this particular switch. This means that we are disconnecting this inductor current IL, and disconnecting means we want to have an abrupt change in the inductor current. Now if you notice here, di over dt is equal to V over L, and this is what was happening till for this particular ramp. At time t is equal to 0, let us say, we turn off this particular switch, thereby forcing the current to immediately become equal to 0. With this thing in mind, notice here that the slope of the current here is infinity. The slope is equal to infinity. This means that this di over dt is equal to infinity, and because we do not have the voltage equal to infinity, we do not have the current equal to infinity. So what happened here is that the voltage across the inductor shall go to minus infinity, and there shall be a high voltage generation that can damage the switch. At least it can damage the switch. So therefore we never operate an inductor in an open circuited mode. We always want to have the path of the current supplied through the inductor, and therefore if I am making a switch here, I shall be placing the pole with this inductance L, and this pole shall have a connection either with this S1 or with this S2. This can also be attributed in terms of the throw, but to have a better understanding, I am saying that this is switch 1 and this is switch 2. So this pole can be connected with this switch 1 and it can be connected to this switch position number 2. Now if we want to analyze this particular circuit, we can say that for a part of the time this P is connected with this S1, and part of the time this P is connected with this position number S2, right? Part of the time it is connected with this S1, and part of the time it is connected with this position S2. So we need to identify two equivalent circuits here. The first circuit is at position S1 and the second one is at position S2. So with this S1, this voltage source Vin is connected with this inductance L. This is open circuited. We have this capacitance here and we have the voltage here. Let us identify the polarities here as well. Since the current is flowing in this direction, we have positive here and we have negative here. So this is VL, this is IL, we have the current here IC, and this is the current IR, and this is the voltage Vin, and this is the voltage output voltage V0. So we have in this particular direction we have this VL, this is IC, this is IR, this is C. At position number 2, we disconnect the voltage source Vin from the circuit. The inductor has a current flowing through this position S2, So we have the same voltage VL available here. Here we have the capacitance, and here we have the output voltage V naught and the resistance, and this is IC and this is IL. Now based on these two positions, we have two different circuits which are very easy to understand, because these circuits consist of only a DC source, inductance, capacitance and a resistance. So the point here which are of our interest is to first of all find out what is the voltage across the inductance here. So the voltage across the inductance can be find out by applying the Kirchhoff's voltage law in this closed loop here. So if I apply the Kirchhoff's voltage law in the closed loop, then I have, since if this is the direction of the KVL, we have minus V in, then it enters the positive terminal of this VL. So this is plus VL, and then it enters the positive of this V naught plus V naught, and this should sum equal to 0. And therefore this VL is equal to V in minus V naught. Regarding this second circuit, we have again we have this closed loop here. So let us apply the Kirchhoff's voltage law again here for the second circuit as well. Doing so, we do not have a voltage here, so it is entering the positive terminal of this VL. So this is VL, and it is entering the positive terminal of V naught. So this is VL plus V naught equal to 0. Therefore this VL is equal to minus V naught. The second thing here is that because we know the voltage across the inductor, now we can go for the characteristics of the inductor voltage, that is by using VL is equal to L di over dt, I can verify that the slope of the current di over dt as a result of this applied voltage VL is equal to V in minus V naught over L for switch position number 1, and it is equal to di over dt is equal to minus V naught over L for switch at position number 2 or at S2. Now to find out the transfer function of this given circuit, we need to draw this particular equation and this particular equation over one switching cycle, and also we shall draw these current slopes or the current through an inductor to find out the value of the inductance. So this upper voltage, let me write it here, this upper voltage, this provides me a transfer function of this given circuit, and this will provide me the value of the inductance L I will get through by drawing these two. Also notice here that these two can also provide me the transfer function of this given circuit, as I will demonstrate in the today's class. So here we have the voltage across the inductance VL. During the dTs time, it is equal to Vn minus V naught. So we will say that we have this V in minus V naught. This is the voltage across the inductor, and for the switch position number 2, it is equal to minus V naught. So it will go down and it will have a value equal to minus V naught. Since we have claimed that the switching period Ts is divided into two parts, dTs and d dash Ts, so let us say that at switch position number S1, this one is dTs, and at this position S2, this position is d prime Ts. So we have this equals to dTs, and this is equal to d prime Ts, and this whole cycle is the one switching cycle of our circuit. The other waveform is the current waveform through the inductor, which is this IL. IL shall have a slope. It will start from some initial value, because we have assumed that the circuit is operating in a steady state condition, and therefore it will start from some initial value, and with a constant slope equal to V in minus V naught over L, it shall reach a final value at the end of the dTs time period. So this starting point is the I naught. This slope is equal to V in minus V naught over L, and we have minus V naught over L at the end of the dTs time, and during this time this is the slope which is minus V naught over L, such that at the end of the switching cycle we reach this same initial point I naught from which the inductor current start increasing. Now if we want to have some analysis here, the analysis proceeds a very simple procedure, that is, we shall be applying the principles of steady state converter analysis, which states that when an inductor is in a steady state condition, then the volt second balance is equal to 0. That is, that the area which is enclosed in this dTs time V in minus V naught should be equal to the area enclosed under this curve V naught minus V naught over D dash time Ts. And also you see here that the inductor net change in the inductor current is equal to 0. So we started from this initial value, we reached to some final value, and then we are back at this initial value I naught at the end of that particular switching cycle. So applying the volt second balance across the inductor, we see that V in minus V naught into dTs plus d dash Ts into minus V naught, that is equal to 0. So we can take this dTs out of this equation, so this becomes d times V in minus d time V naught minus d dash V naught, and that is equal to 0. From here we can say that's d time V in minus V naught into d plus d dash, that is equal to 0. And using the common sense, this d plus d dash is equal to 1, right? So this is equal to dV in is equal to V naught is equal to d, and this is the transfer function of this given circuit. So we have some important points that we need to see in this particular equation. The first thing here is that this output voltage V naught cannot exceed or cannot be greater than the input voltage V in, because D at a maximum can be 1. This is the first thing that we see here. And because this converter is not capable of increasing the input voltage, we call this a buck converter, right? This is a buck converter or a step down converter, right? This is the first thing. Second thing that we can see here is that this converter has linear control characteristics when we draw this D and this V naught. So the control characteristics are linear. This is the second thing that we can see through this volt second balance equation. This particular transfer function can also be derived using the current waveform here, which is shown here. So we know that the net change in an inductor current over one switching cycle is equal to 0. So we start from some initial value and then we are back at that initial value at the end of that switching cycle. So there is no net change in the inductor current once the inductor is operating in a steady state condition. So the net change in the inductor current is equal to 0. So therefore we can say that the delta IL at the position 1 plus the delta IL at position number 2, their sum should be equal to 0. So what is this delta IL? You see here, we know the initial value, we know the slope, we know the time, we know what is the final value. So this whole delta IL, the rate, the net change during this dTs is equal to V in minus V naught over L divided by multiplied by this dTs. It is just like a simple thing that we know what is the slope, we know for what period of time we continued with that slope, so we know what is the net change in the in that particular entity. So the delta IL during the position number 1 is equal to V in minus V naught over L times dTs plus minus V naught over L time d prime Ts, and that is equal to 0, and this leads me to the same thing, V naught over V in is equal to d. Right. So there are two methods to find out the transfer function of this buck converter. You can either go through you can either draw the waveform across the voltage, or you can actually go through the current waveform of this particular inductor. This is the first thing that we have achieved so far. Now let us find out the value of this inductance L and this C. So if you see here, this inductance or this current has some average value as well, which is IL, and the value of the inductor current hovers above and below this particular value, which is known as the ripple of the inductor current. So let us say that this is equal to delta IL, or in some books it is written as half of delta IL as well. But again, we need to carefully see that what is actually meant by that particular author. For example, if you go through the book of Fundamental of Power Electronics by Ericsson, he is attributing this as delta IL, whereas another textbook written by Delian W. Hart, it takes this delta IL as half of delta IL, because for him this delta IL is the peak to peak ripple, right? Ericsson is on the other way, Ericsson is taking it as a peak ripple, not as a peak to peak ripple. So let us adopt this, that this is the peak ripple here, delta IL, and above that this is equal to this delta IL, this is equal to delta IL, and here we also have the delta IL such that we have a symmetry in the current waveform. So starting from this I naught up till the I maximum, which is this particular point, the change in the inductor current is 2 times delta IL. So let me draw this waveform here again to have a better understanding. This is IL, this is I max, this is I naught, this is V in minus V naught over L, this is minus V naught over L, this is d time Ts, and this is d prime Ts, and this whole is the Ts. Now if you see here that the net change in the inductor current is this dTs. So what is the change here? The change is V in minus V naught over L into dTs. This gives you a value which is equal to, let me first of all write this as, this is delta IL, and here we have also, this is also delta IL, that is equal to 2 times delta IL, right. So based on this particular equation, this is the net change in the inductor current, which is this slope times the DTS, for which the switch remain in that position number 1. So based on this, we have this inductance L here available here. So inductance L is equal to V in minus V naught over 2 times delta IL into Fs into D, right. This is the value of the inductance. It can also be calculated based on the off time, that the net change here 2 delta IL is equal to minus V naught L into D prime Ts, and therefore the inductance L is equal to V naught into 1 minus D divided by delta IL into Fs. These are the expressions to find out the value of the inductance L, right. So far we have actually successfully derived the transfer function, which is this one, V naught over V in is equal to D, and we have also derived the expression to find out the inductance of this given circuit. So what are we left with? We still need to know what is the value of this capacitance C. This capacitance C cannot be calculated based on the current through the capacitor, because if we apply the KCL at this particular node A, then this IL with a negative sign, because it is entering this node, plus IC plus IR is equal to 0, and this IC is equal to IL minus IR. And also for this off period of time, this is the same. For on period of time, when the switch is in position number 1, we have the same equation for the current. When it is connected with this switch position number 2, we have the same expression for the capacitor current, and therefore if we tend to draw the current through the capacitor, it is a straight line, and therefore we cannot apply the charge second balance concept, which says that the net change, that the net current in a capacitor is equal to 0 under a steady state condition. So we need to adopt a different method, a different mechanism to solve for the value of the capacitor in this particular circuit. We need to adopt for that. Unless and until we do not do that, we are not able to express the value of the capacitor as a function of these particular derivations that we have made. So how can we do that? For that, we need to look on to this particular current waveform, which is the inductor current waveform. This IL is actually the DC part or the average part, and therefore in a well designed system, we design this system such that this IL, in a well designed system or in an ideal system, this IL, which is an average value, shall only pass through this particular load R, because the capacitor will offer 1 over 2 pi Fc, and for this average part that has a frequency equal to 0, the capacitor shall act like an open circuit, and therefore all the average component shall pass through the load. What about this ripple component? This ripple component may pass through this resistance R and may pass through this capacitor C. Ideally, it is the job of the capacitor to filter all these ripple components so that there is no ripple component present in the output current. So for in a well designed converter, C is selected such that XC is smaller than the resistance R, so that it absorbs maximum of the AC component which is generated because of the switching of the switches S1 and S2. So we need to see that once this DC part is supplied to this resistance R, whatever this triangular waveform is left, it is diverted into this particular capacitor, and therefore the capacitor current shall have this type of a shape, because this is what we, if I move it a little bit further, because when I bring it down to 0, this particular portion shall appear here, and this is the sort of a current that flows through the capacitor C. Now with this in mind, we see that we have, this is the delta IL, and during the time when we have this IC positive, then we have the charges stored in the capacitor, and during the time when we have a negative, you see, when we have the negative current flowing through the capacitor, it releases the power to the load, and therefore based on this particular thing, the voltage across the capacitor shall have this type of a shape, with here we have this V naught, and here we have this delta V naught, which is the net change in the capacitor voltage. So the capacitor is supplying the current to the load, and therefore the voltage drops till this particular point where the capacitor is again being charged by the inductor current, and so is the capacitor voltage, which starts to rise again. It becomes maximum at this particular point. Thereafter the capacitor again supplies power to the load, and therefore its voltage drop until we get the new switching cycle, right? So we have this kind of a voltage available here. Now if you notice here, what is the total charge Q enclosed here? Q is equal to CV, right? Q is equal to CV, and also we notice that the net change in the charge delta Q is equal to C into delta V, and this V is this V naught. So we have delta V naught equal to delta Q over C. So what is the total charge which is enclosed here? This total charge which is enclosed here can be calculated using the area under the triangle concept. So the area under the triangle here is that we have the height is equal to delta IL, and this, because the waveform is symmetrical, therefore this is Ts over 2. Half of the time we have this particular area, and the rest of the half is diverted into these red areas, and therefore using the triangle area concept, we have Q is equal to, and half base into height, so this is half into Ts over 2, and the height is delta IL. So that is equal to delta IL Ts over 4. And if I put it here, then this delta V naught is equal to delta IL Ts over 4C. In some books it is equal to 8C, but for those books you should notice that this is not delta IL, rather they have taken this as half of delta IL, and for that you will see that in some books it is equal to 8, because when I put this delta IL equal to half of delta IL, this becomes equal to 8. So there is no discrepancy between the theory that I have presented here and in the majority of the textbooks. So you need to ponder on the concept where the author is taking the delta IL. If it is the peak ripple, it is delta IL. If it is the peak to peak ripple, we consider it a half of delta IL. So this is how we see minor changes in the nomenclature of the books. So with this in mind, we have Also we know that delta IL open is equal to minus V naught over L into T minus dt, and therefore this delta V naught is equal to T V naught 1 minus dt divided by 4 CL, right, and this is equal to V naught 1 minus d over 4 LC F square, and this is equal to delta V naught, and based on this thing, this C is equal to V naught 1 minus d divided by delta V naught 4 times L F square, and this is the value of the capacitance, right. This is the value of the capacitance, and this V naught over delta V naught is actually important because this particular equation is used to calculate the value of the capacitor as a function of the ripple to the output voltage ripple and the output voltage, and therefore this is much used in designing a given DC to DC buck converter. What about the second thing? We have used the switches so far, so let us see what kind of power electronic devices we can operate. Since this is the pole, this is the inductance, and this is the second switch, I said this is S1 and this is S2. So we need to establish what kind of semiconductor devices can be used to realize this switch S1 and this S2. So you see here, when this switch is connected with this S2, right, when this switch is connected with this S2, this S1 voltage or the voltage here, let me write this here, VS1P, here we can see that this VS1P, because this P is now grounded, this switch is now closed with this position number S2, therefore VS1P is positive and this S1 has to block the voltage that is equal to this V in. So therefore for this S1 we have VS1P is positive, that it needs to block. When this switch is connected to this switch position number 1 here, then the current flow is the same as that of the inductor current, and therefore this S1 should be capable of allowing the forward current to flow. So this is the IV characteristics of the required for the switch S1. For the switch S2, when this switch is connected here, then the voltage that it needs to block here is this plus and this minus. So this VS2P is equal to 0 minus V in, because the pole is now connected with this V in. So it requires to have a negative voltage blocking capability, and when we connect this particular P with this switch S2, then the current flow is in this particular direction, because the inductor current is not seen negative for this particular converter. You can see we have only the positive current flowing through the inductor. So therefore this requires a positive current to flow. So this is I and this is the V. So in a nutshell, we have seen that the switch which is able to operate in this particular quadrant and in this particular quadrant, this can only be realized by using a diode. So the diode is the only viable choice here, because it reduces the amount of control time required. The second one here is, this can be either a BJT or a MOSFET, or we can either use the combination which is a hybrid form of the BJT and a MOSFET, which is known as the IGBTs. So with this thing in mind, the final circuit which comes out to be equal to is this one. So we have a diode here connected here. This is the inductor, we have the capacitor, and here we have the resistance, right? And of course there shall be some gate driver circuit that will drive this particular MOSFET, and this diode will turn on automatically when we turn this off. So this, it will act as a freewheeling diode for the rest of the circuit. Now the important point here is, to design a particular converter, we need to understand what are the stresses on these semiconductor devices, so that we can select appropriate type or appropriate model of a diode for a given converter. So for a given converter, if you see, when we have switch in position number 1, this whole portion, this particular portion of the inductor current flows through the MOSFET or the IGBT-Q. The rest of the time when we have this D-TS, then this BJT is off, and therefore this current is tackled by the diode D, and both of them have to cater for the maximum current I maximum here. So the maximum current rating of these two devices, maximum current rating I maximum, should be greater than the peak current, peak inductor current, I peak. And how we find out this I peak? This is equal to IL plus delta IL, and delta IL is usually specified as 10 to 20% of the IL. Now if you notice here one more thing that is very important, that this delta IL plays a significant role in defining this I maximum. For example, we say that this delta IL is this one, right? If I increase the ripple and say, let us allow this much amount of ripple in the inductor current, and thereafter I go further by increasing the ripple through the inductor current, as a result, the best thing I am getting here is the decrement in the size of the inductor. So if you have this delta IL large, we have this inductance requirement small, which means that we shall see, or we will get a reduction in the weight and in the size of the converter, that consequently increases the power density of the converter, right? This is the first thing that we see when we increase this delta IL. But as a downside, if you see this delta IL, if you increase this delta IL, this peak current or the maximum current rating is increased, because this one and this one has some difference, and therefore by increasing this current ripple, right, if delta IL is large, then the current stress on the power switches is large, and therefore an optimization is required while selecting the appropriate allowable current limit through an inductor, so that we can also have a normalized value of the current stress over the given semiconductors, because this peak current shall produce losses in the in our semiconductor devices. The second thing here is about the voltage that is required as a bare minimum for these two devices Q and this diode D. So the voltage requirement for both of these two, this is also for Q and D, the voltage when this diode is conducting, then this Q is actually blocking all the input voltage. So this V minimum required for these switches is greater than the input voltage V in for this Q. When this Q is on, then this D is also blocking this input voltage V in, and therefore for both Q and D, the current rating should be greater than the maximum value. So the I minimum should be greater than the I maximum, and this I minimum, let me write this again, that I forward minimum is greater than the I maximum, which is equal to the IL plus delta IL, and this is true for Q collector to emitter or drain to source IQDS for this particular switch. And similarly for the voltage, the VQS or VDS should be greater than this V input, and so is this VR should be greater than the input voltage V in. So we do not have excessive voltage stress on these two particular switches. Other than that, we have calculated the value of this L, we have calculated the value of this C and this particular resistance R. Now let us move ahead a little bit and see the steps for designing a buck converter. So what are the different steps in designing a buck converter? The design procedure is as follows. We first need to specify if the converter is in CCM mode or not. This I haven't discussed yet, but as a time step we can say that the CCM is known as the continuous conduction mode. Continuous conduction mode means that the inductor current always have a non-zero value. Just like here we have inductor current without touching this 0 point, this we call this as a CCM, that the inductor current is in a continuous conduction mode. And this can be calculated by taking the minimum value of the inductance to ensure that the current is operating in a CCM mode. The second thing is that we have to specify the ripple current ratio. This is the second step. So number 3, as a factor of safety and to compensate for the circuit behavior, a 25% larger value of inductance is selected to ensure the CCM mode. So whatever the value we have selected, we, in order to ensure that the converter always operate in a continuous conduction mode, we select whatever value we select. In a design value we exceed it to something around 25%. Then we need to select the capacitor. Capacitor is selected using the delta V naught, which is equal to 5 to 10% of the V naught. So for this particular ripple in the output voltage, it is usually attributed as 5 to 10% of the rated output voltage V naught. Then we select the switching frequency Fs, which is usually kept high in tens of kilohertz, so that the size of the magnetic component can be reduced, right? But again there is a trade-off, because we cannot have an excessively high amount of excessively high value of the switching frequency, because the size of the inductance is also limited by the amount of current that flows through that inductor. So it may be possible that at place where you increase the frequency so high so that the core size becomes very low, you might not have the space for the wires, inductor wire to be wound through that particular core. So there is always a trade-off which is required. So as a general result, something around frequencies up to from 20 kilohertz to 100 kilohertz, they are used for switching off these particular DC to DC converter. We avoid operating the switching converters in an audible frequency range to avoid the audible noise that appears through the choke of the inductive components. Then we have to increase the efficiency. Sometimes we replace the diode with a MOSFET, and this process is known as the synchronous rectification. This process is known as the synchronous rectification. because we have earlier seen that the losses, turn on losses of a MOSFET are much smaller than the turn on losses of a diode. So for those DC to DC converter where the input voltage is very low, we avoid the use of the diode by replacing it with a MOSFET, because MOSFET is able to conduct the current with much lower on losses compared to the diode. The other important point is we can use a MOSFET with low RDS on. This also reduces the losses, turn on losses of a particular MOSFET. And also the MOSFET, the switch, or let me call this the switches, are selected using the ratings and are usually higher than the V input and I maximum to have a factor of safety. So this is how we can design a given buck converter. Of course, there are some additional details required to compensate for all the design, to consider all the design parameters. For instance, what kind of controller can be used, how to interface the controller with this particular switch, the gate driver circuits. To have a safe operation, we need snubber circuits as well across the switches, so that we ensure the reliable operation. And then there are other stuffs, but for the time being, based on these few guidelines, you can always try the design problems. One of the design that are given in the textbook. So I advise you to go through the design example given in the textbook by Daniel W. Hart, right? It is chapter number 6. I will only simulate that in a later video. So till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.